Marcus had been camping alone for 3 days. He liked it that way. No phones ringing, no people talking, just the trees, the fire, and the sound of wind moving through the branches above him. He had picked a spot deep inside Harrow Forest, far from the marked trails, far from anyone who might bother him. On the third night, the forest went strange. It started small. The crickets stopped. Just like that. One moment they were loud and steady, and the next, silence. Total, heavy silence. Marcus looked up from his book and stared at the trees around his camp. The fire crackled softly, but everything else was completely still. Probably nothing, he told himself, but he did not go back to reading. He sat and listened. The silence was the kind that presses against your ears, the kind that feels like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Marcus had been in the woods many times in his life. He had heard strange sounds before: owls, foxes, the crack of a dead branch falling. But he had never heard a silence like this one. It felt alive somehow. It felt like it was watching him. He tried to tell himself it was just an animal nearby, that something had frightened the crickets, that in a few minutes the night sounds would come back and everything would be fine. He poked at the fire with a stick and watched the orange sparks rise and vanish into the dark sky above. Then he heard footsteps, slow, soft, coming from between the trees to the north of his camp. Not the quick scatter of a rabbit or a deer. These were deliberate. These were the footsteps of something that was not afraid of being heard. His hand moved to the flashlight beside his sleeping bag. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself 1,000 calm and reasonable things. But his hand stayed on the flashlight, and his eyes stayed locked on the dark line of trees where the sound was coming from, and the fire behind him felt very small, and the forest around him felt very, very large. The figure came out of the dark slowly, as if it had all the time in the world. Marcus turned on his flashlight and pointed the beam toward the trees. It landed on a boy, maybe 17 or 18 years old, thin and pale, wearing dirty clothes that seemed too small for his body. He stood at the very edge of the firelight, just where the shadows ended and the warm glow began. He did not speak. He only stood there. "Hey!" Marcus called out. "Hey, are you all right?" The boy said nothing. He tilted his head slightly to one side, like a dog hearing an unfamiliar sound. Then he took one step closer to the fire. The warm light touched his face. His skin was very white, not pale like someone who stayed indoors, but white like old paper, like something that had not seen sunlight in a very long time. His mouth was closed, his face was completely blank, and his eyes were fixed on Marcus without moving, without blinking. Marcus stood up slowly, keeping his voice calm. "Are you lost? Do you need help?" The boy finally opened his mouth. His voice was flat and dry, like old leaves crumbling between your fingers. "I'm looking for my parents," he said. "I cannot find them. Will you help me find them?" Marcus felt a chill move through him that had nothing to do with the cold air. Something about the way the boy spoke was wrong. The words were right. The meaning was right. But the feeling behind them was completely empty. Like a machine reading words from a piece of paper. Like a voice coming from somewhere very far away, echoing through a long, cold tunnel. Still, he was a boy alone in a dark forest at night. Marcus could not just leave him there. "Of course," Marcus said. "Stay close to me. We'll find them together." He pulled on his boots, grabbed his flashlight, and kicked dirt over his fire. As the flames died and the darkness rushed in around them, Marcus noticed something for the first time. Since the moment the boy had appeared, since every word they had spoken to each other, in all that time, the boy had not blinked once, not a single time. Marcus told himself he was imagining it. He told himself he was tired and nervous and seeing things that were not there. He adjusted the flashlight in his hand and turned toward the trees. "Which way?" he asked. The boy raised one thin arm and pointed into the dark. They walked together into the trees, following the direction the boy pointed. Marcus held his flashlight high. The boy walked beside him, or rather, just behind him. Every time Marcus slowed down, the boy slowed down too. Every time Marcus turned to check on him, the boy was exactly the same distance away. Not closer, not farther, always the same. "What are your parents' names?" Marcus asked, trying to make conversation, trying to make things feel normal. "They are in the forest," the boy said. "Yes, but what are their names so we can call for them?" A long pause, then, "They are in the forest." Marcus stopped walking. He turned fully and looked at the boy with the flashlight. The beam caught the boy's face directly. His skin looked even worse up close, almost gray in the white light, with a texture that seemed wrong, too smooth, too flat, like the surface of something that had dried out a long time ago. His lips were barely parted. His chest, Marcus suddenly realized, was not moving. He was not breathing. Or if he was, Marcus could not see it. And his eyes. Those eyes were still fixed on Marcus with that same steady, unblinking stare. Marcus had been watching for a minute straight now. 2 minutes. 3. Not once. Not a single blink. "How long have you been out here?" Marcus asked, his voice a little quieter than before. "I have been here a long time," the boy said. "Are you cold?" "No." "Are you hungry?" "No." "Are you hurt?" The boy smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, barely a movement at the corners of his mouth. But it was the wrongest thing Marcus had ever seen on a human face. It did not look like happiness. It did not look like relief. It looked like something that had studied smiling from a distance, from very far away, and was now trying to copy it without fully understanding what it meant. "No," the boy said softly, "I am not hurt." Marcus turned away and kept walking. He told himself he would walk a little further, just to the next clearing. If they found no sign of anyone there, he would turn back, get the boy to the nearest ranger station, and let someone else deal with this. He was a camper, not a rescue worker. He was already deep enough in the forest, deep enough that the sounds of the road and the world outside had long since faded to nothing, deep enough that if he screamed, no one would hear him. He tried not to think that thought, but once it arrived, it would not leave. They had been walking for nearly 20 minutes when Marcus stumbled over a root and reached out to catch himself against a tree trunk. The flashlight spun from his hand and hit the ground, rolling sideways so the beam swept across the boy from a new angle. From below, lighting up his face from underneath, and Marcus saw. He saw what he had somehow missed, or what some quiet and desperate part of his brain had refused to show him until this moment. He saw it clearly now, in the cold light on the forest floor, and once he saw it, he could not unsee it. The boy had no eyes, not blind eyes, not clouded eyes or damaged eyes. There were simply no eyes at all. Where his eyes should have been, there were only dark, hollow sockets, 2 smooth, empty holes in the pale face, as if someone had pressed their thumbs into soft clay and left the marks there forever. No lids, no lashes, no whites, nothing. Just deep, absolute darkness sitting inside the shape of a face. Marcus could not speak. He could not move. Every part of him had turned to stone. He stood in the dark forest and looked at those 2 empty holes, and a feeling rose inside him that he had no name for. Bigger than fear, bigger than horror. Something ancient and total that reached all the way down to the deepest part of him and pulled. The boy turned his head in Marcus's direction, slowly, perfectly, as if he could see everything. "We are close now," the boy said. "Close to what?" Marcus whispered. He barely recognized his own voice. "To where they are waiting." Marcus grabbed the flashlight from the ground. He took one step back, then another. His mind was screaming at him to run, to turn and sprint and not stop until he hit the road, until he hit the town, until he was somewhere bright and loud and full of people. His legs were shaking, his hands were shaking. The flashlight trembled in his grip, throwing wild shadows across the trees. The boy tilted his head again, that same slow bird-like movement, and then he smiled. Not the small copied smile from before. This one was wide, too wide. It stretched far beyond the edges of what a human mouth should be able to do, pulling up and back until the lower half of the boy's face was almost entirely teeth. Too many teeth, too long, gleaming white in the dark. The smile kept going and going, as if the face was splitting open to make room for something much larger underneath. "Thank you for walking with me," the boy said. His voice was no longer flat. It was deep now, layered, like many voices speaking in one, like something vast, pretending to be small. It is much easier to find them when someone shows the way. The transformation did not happen all at once. It happened piece by piece, the way a coat is slowly removed, one sleeve, then another, then the whole thing falling away to reveal what is underneath. The boy's arms lengthened first. The fingers stretched out, each one extending far beyond where fingers should end, thinning to dark, sharp points that scraped the ground. The shoulders rose and widened, splitting the dirty shirt apart, spreading outward until they blocked the narrow gap between the trees on either side. The head dropped forward as the neck grew long, long and jointed, like an insect's, bending at angles no neck should bend at. Marcus ran. He did not think. He did not look back. He ran between the trees with the flashlight, cutting a frantic beam through the dark, branches tearing at his face and arms, roots reaching up to trip him. Behind him, he heard the sound of something very large moving through the forest. Not crashing, not stumbling, moving with horrible ease, gliding between the trees as if the forest itself stepped out of its way. And above the sound of breaking branches, above the thunder of his own blood in his ears, he heard that voice again. Deep and layered and coming from everywhere at once. From above and below, and from inside the ground itself. "You do not need to run," it said almost gently. "My parents are everywhere here. They have been waiting a very long time. They only needed someone to follow." Marcus burst through the tree line and fell onto a gravel road. He scrambled to his feet, his knees bleeding, his lungs burning. He ran down the road without stopping, without thinking, until he saw the distant yellow lights of a petrol station a mile ahead. He did not go back for his tent. He did not go back for his bag or his food or anything he had left at the camp. He got into his car and he drove, and he did not stop driving until the sun came up and the forest was 100 miles behind him. He never went back to Harrow Forest. He never camped alone again. But sometimes, late at night, in his own bed with all the lights on and the city noise outside his window, he would lie still and feel it. That pressing, heavy silence. The silence that feels alive. The silence that feels like it is watching. And in those moments, he would reach for the lamp on his nightstand and make very, very sure it was turned all the way on. Because somewhere in the dark space between sleeping and waking, in the place where the mind goes quiet and unguarded, he could still see them. 2 empty sockets, no eyes inside, and a smile that went too far.